Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Sports on the Positive Tip, where we have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith. Kenny, the Twins, Minnesota Twins, have now won 10 in a row. They are surging. Any thoughts on the Twins? It looks like we've got another good team in the American League now.
I was hoping that wouldn't happen, but I think it'll be good for them because this was kind of a pivotal year.
Yeah,
Like, what do you do with Carlos Correa? What do you do kind of with a lot of the other pieces?
yeah,
Do you keep around your manager? So
yeah.
good for them.
Okay, all right. The Cardinals finally lost after winning 9 in a row, but then they won the second game of their doubleheader. Should the Cubs be worried?
Yes, I think they should because
Uh,
that rotation's good.
yeah, yeah. Your boy Isaiah Kiner Falefa hit a home run the other night, but before the game, he finally got to meet Ralph Kiner's son. And you know that they're distant cousins, and he says that he wants to follow in Ralph Kiner's footsteps and go into broadcasting as soon as his career is over. Your thoughts on Kiner Falefa?
I mean, I guess he would be a good broadcaster. He was never like a very uh, dynamic clubhouse guy, but
Yeah,
also he was probably pretty knowledgeable. I mean, he plays everywhere. He'll be
yeah,
good, like if you're talking defense stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, last one. Max Fried leads the major leagues in ERA, having just a phenomenal start to his Yankee career. Do you know who's second in the majors in ERA and leads the National League?
Ooh, that's a good question. Uh, is it Yamamoto?
No, but from the same country.
Is it Sasaki?
No, it's
Nah.
Kodai Senga. Kodai
Oh, I should have
Senga.
guessed that.
He's gotten off to a phenomenal start again. 1.22 ERA. He's 4-2 right now, but Fried's ERA is 1.11. My goodness, man. I knew he was an ace. I didn't think he was this good. All right, we got a lot to get into, right? NBA last night. Knicks lose to the Celtics, but the T-Wolves advance. We'll talk about the fallout there in Cleveland and how that city is handling the 64-win Cavs going out in the second round. You ready to get this started?
Let's get into it.
All right. This episode of Sports on the Positive Tip is brought to you by the Tavern Coffee House. Attention, coffee lovers. Are you craving the perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Well, look no further than the Tavern Coffee House. It's located at 12302 Buckeye Road in Cleveland, Ohio. You can also check them out and order your coffee at thetaverncoffee.com. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. We are back after a week off. Last week, you had some nuptials to go to up there in Boston. Very interesting that you landed up there in Boston, back in Boston with the Knicks playing the Celtics. We're gonna go right to the NBA. Let's start there because we've got some baseball, Pete Rose to talk about, and I'm gonna talk about the documentary I watched on Netflix called Shooting Stars. But let's start first, Kenny, with the NBA. And before we get to the Knicks, it's a night later, but you're right there at ground zero. What's the fallout? Indy won 50 games and the Cavs won 64. And so Indy wins in 5 games. They win on Cleveland's home court. What's the fallout there? If there is any fallout, I can't imagine that there would be a lot of changes there because they had a great team. But what happened aside from injuries? What happened and what's the mood like there in Cleveland?
The mood is very disappointed. Because like there was a lot of expectations, honestly, especially after the sweep of the Heat, which by the way, it was the biggest point differential in any series ever in NBA
Yeah,
history. Like
yeah,
they absolutely destroyed them.
yeah,
Um, but there was a lot of high hopes. Okay, yeah, we're going back to the finals. First time going to the finals without LeBron. Everything was exciting. And then I know like injuries, I think was a big factor.
of course.
Um, but also it kind of just seemed like they didn't really play with a lot of heart. And I think that's the thing that a lot of the fans are a little annoyed about because there was a lot of um, just like lackluster play. I don't know if you saw the thing. Max Strus texted everyone like, "If you don't show up tonight, or if you don't feel like you can win tonight, don't show up," and then proceeds to go 0 for 9 from the field. Um,
Wow. Wow.
so like, I think there's a lot of like just and also towards the end of the games, like it just seemed like Indiana was outpacing them and
Yeah.
just was
Yeah.
just a better team. Um, Now, obviously, this is like the 24, 48-hour reaction of like, oh, we got to really shake things up. There really isn't a lot that you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be a market if you really wanted to like trade Jared Allen or for whatever reason trade Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
Um, like there's talk of Giannis, like, oh, like I wonder if we could get Giannis here. I don't think Giannis would. I don't think the Bucks would want to trade Giannis to Cleveland.
Yeah.
I think if they're trading him out of the conference. Um, which I mean, you can make an argument for the Knicks too, but also like this neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But then also, I've heard a couple people now bringing up LeBron, which I think is an interesting idea. I think it would be a really fun way to like capstone his career, even if the Cavs didn't win the title. But like having that last season would just be a fun season.
That's
I don't think
interesting.
he'll do
Wow.
that.
Yeah.
Like, first, he would have to probably take very close to the veterans minimum. He would have to fully like opt out, or like the Cavs would have to trade for him. But it is an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but obviously, it's a lot of disappointment. You had texted this a little while ago that it's only been two times since 2000 that the top two, like the both number one seeds, made the finals.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I mean, it happens every year. I
Yeah.
mean, I know it's hard to say this after seeing what happened last night, but like, there's a chance the top two seeds could go down in the
Yeah.
East.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and even like OKC, I know that they're up 3-1 or 3-2 now, but like, there's a chance that they could still lose because Denver is still
Of
Denver.
course.
Like,
Yeah.
it does go to show you that like the playoffs are a grind, and I say it every year. Sometimes it's not the best teams that go out and win; it's the healthiest teams.
Yeah.
I feel like the Cavs really took a back seat with the injuries and could never really recover from
Yeah.
it. I think that is a little bit of an aspect of it, but obviously, like you can't blame injuries. I mean, look what the Celtics did last night without their best player.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I told you at the beginning of the Cavs Indy series that I thought it was a bad matchup for the Cavs. But and there was a couple of reasons for that. I think that there's a toughness and a grittiness to Indiana that I'm not sure that the Cavs have that built in yet because of where they, and this is going to be a question I have for you, because of how their regular season went so well without hiccups. I mean, I forgot what they started out of the gate with, but they were, I want to say at least like 20-3 or something like that early on, and they never looked back. But Kay, I want to, and this leads into, we'll talk about the Knicks Celtics here because it leads into it as well. Is it, are there teams that use the regular season to prepare more for the playoffs? And teams that are just a little bit more playoff tough than others. And I'm starting to see that this year. I thought I saw that a little bit last year, like with Dallas. Um, and I'm starting to feel that this year with the Timberwolves, with Indy, and now with the Knicks. I mean, Indy won 50 games, Cavs won 64. That's a big difference, right? The Knicks, I forgot how many. I know the Celtics won at least 60, maybe 61, and the Knicks won 51, right? And the Celtics swept all four games against the Knicks in the regular season. But even without last night, the Knicks have looked like, well, the Knicks are up 3 games to 2, so right now they're the better team, right? Um, is that a thing? Do you think that there are teams, and we've got a championship coach in Indy who knows what he's doing, has been there a million times before. Do you think there are teams that really prepare for the postseason? Is that what we're starting to see a little bit here in the NBA?
yeah, I think so. Um, I feel like you saw it a lot with LeBron too when he was going to the finals every year.
Yeah.
They never went in as the number one seed. You have the year that the Hawks were like amazing with Trae Young. I still can't stand him because of it. Um, the Toronto Raptors several years with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry were always the top seed, but yet they would always get just like absolutely leveled. I think usually you see the more veteran teams, they don't care as much about winning in the regular season. It's a matter of being in good position in the postseason.
Yeah.
Because I think something else that kind of still matters is where you land. Because, like, for example, the Warriors. First, you got to go against the Rockets with that excellent defense, and then obviously you Steph Curry. But then the Timberwolves are also just a really tough matchup.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
not saying they would have fared better on the other side of the bracket, but against Denver, I think that they can match up pretty well because I feel like they can run a little bit better with them. The Thunder, too, like a little bit more of the offensive scoring type of
Yeah.
team. So I think that that kind of matters, but I do think there are teams that just it's not that they take the regular season off, but winning 60 plus games isn't a priority as opposed to being healthy for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because that to me, the biggest factor is always health.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like like if Jason Tatum were still healthy, you would be hearing a lot more of, oh yeah, the Celtics will definitely win this series.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but like with him being out, that's a huge factor.
Yeah.
Steph Curry, the second that he pulled that hamstring and was going to be out for several weeks, you knew that series was over.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna say that. And the T-Wolves, it seems like they almost comfortably put away Golden State. I mean, Jimmy Butler obviously fit in extremely well there. They did great after they got him. But and I thought it was a good matchup for the Warriors, and but once Curry got hurt, I mean, he's one of the best players in history. So, and Tatum is one of the best players in the league as well. I think I asked you before the playoffs, because I liked this matchup with the Knicks, and we'll get to that in 1 second. But I said, would you rather have Jalen Brunson or Jason Tatum at this very moment? And I'd rather have Jalen Brunson, and I'm saying that as a Knicks fan, so maybe it's a little biased, but I mean, the guy did win Clutch Player of the Year, but Tatum had his best game in the playoffs when he got hurt. Unfortunately, I think he had 42 points, right? Before he got hurt. I mean, he couldn't miss. He's just shooting from all over the place. But I think the T-Wolves, so just to highlight the point that you said, the T-Wolves, remember, they struggled the first, half of the year because, they made the big trade and listen, I'm a Julius Randle guy, so I knew he was going to come around. And I know him and Edwards. Edwards wants to win. I knew that they would get on the same page at some point. I mean, that's a formidable team now, So second half, once they clicked and they found the right role for DiVincenzo, man, oh man, that team is dangerous, But I think they also won 50 games, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so if they do go to this next round, well, they are in the next round, they're in the conference finals, but if they get OKC, I mean, OKC won 68 games in the regular season. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Let's get to the Knicks. Are you worried?
um, I'm cautiously worried,
Yeah.
and here's why. I do think the Knicks still have the advantage. I think they played really well in the first half. Really, the third quarter killed them.
Yeah.
Freaking Luke Cornett.
I don't
He
remember
can,
him on the Knicks. They kept saying ex-Nick. I swear I don't remember him with the
yeah,
Knicks. But yeah.
I kind of do. He was on like the our fun teams of
Oh
like
God. Yeah.
Knicks legend Kevin Knox.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he was on like that team. I'd actually seen a post like Knicks fans really enjoy this because of lineups like this, and he was one of the people in the lineup.
Really, I swear I
Um,
don't remember him on the Knicks, but go ahead.
Langston Galloway, fun
Oh,
Knicks that we can rattle off names and be like,
uh,
man,
uh,
former captain Lance Thomas.
yeah.
Um,
Uh, yeah.
but here's my only concern: the Celtics are still a really good 3-point shooting team.
Yep.
I think they showed that last night. The Knicks also haven't closed out a series at home since 1999.
Yeah.
That also scares me because like Game 7, anything can happen.
Yep.
That could be good or bad. but like you have the opportunity to close it out. I think that they will. I think that I remember someone. I think it was Nick Wright that said it on FS1 that if the Knicks can push this to 6 games, it'll be the biggest game in Madison Square Garden in 25 years, and
It
it
is.
truly is. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure that the atmosphere is going to be insane,
Yeah.
and I think that the Knicks will feed off of that.
Yeah.
So I do think that they'll close it out. I do get a little bit worried because it's like um, they figured out that they can win without Tatum, which like they were 8-2 in the regular season without Jason Tatum. But
Yeah.
most of those games were against like bad teams.
Yeah.
Like he's taken off against like the Wizards or like the teams that didn't win the lottery because I'm gonna joke and say the lottery was rigged. Obviously it wasn't,
Yeah.
um, but like Washington, Charlotte, like teams like that, he took
Yeah.
off for. So it's hard to say that they really needed him. Um, and also with him out, the ball was moving around a lot more,
Yeah.
and that's the part where I'm like a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
But I do think the Knicks can still pull it off. I
Yeah.
think that they just need to be. The biggest thing last night was the fouls.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In the third quarter, you can't be in the penalty with like 9 minutes left.
Yeah.
Jalen Brunson fouling out at like the 7-ish minute mark, like that doesn't. None of that helps.
And that never happens. I don't remember him fouling out in the regular season at all. I don't remember him ever being in foul trouble. I was shocked at that. Um, you're right. I mean, the Celtics played from the third quarter on, played just a near perfect second half. But the Knicks, we said this a lot during the regular season, right? And this again highlights the point. We'll leave that point for a second though. But there were times, not always in the regular season, but we saw it in game four. When the Knicks don't just rely on Brunson, and I'll throw Towns in there. The two guys that I'm calling out, man, is Anunoby and Bridges, because Bridges had that phenomenal game in game four, right? And so did Anunoby. And when you have the five guys, and Hart was great last night, especially after getting clunked in the eye there. Boy, that was scary. But when you have them clicking the way they do, and with Robinson now in good health, um, that's a team that there was a lot of times during the season I can envision them going to the finals, you know. But last night, I mean, and even Brunson wasn't totally on his game. He came out great, but they double teamed him a lot, and Bridges and Anunoby never got going last night. So I do think that I think I feel exactly the same way as you. I would be terrified of a game seven back in Boston, because then they've got momentum, win it for Jason. You know what I mean? Um, they've got to close him out here in game six. I think most people feel that way. But Towns also has got to take advantage of the matchup. I mean, I'll give Cornette a lot of credit last night, but my goodness, man, on a good day, regular day, not, and this is no knock on Cornette, not many centers can stay with Towns. He's just a uniquely talented dude, but he just, go ahead. Yeah, he just couldn't get
Oh,
open.
my biggest issue is like Towns. Why aren't you shooting from the arc?
Yeah,
Like, because that's what the Celtics were doing. They were bringing Mitchell Robinson out so they could drive in and then either have an easy layup or they kick it back out. Most of the time, they kick it back out because they're the Celtics. But like at some point, like the guy's got 7 blocks last night.
yeah,
Take him away from the paint. Like
yeah,
you got to draw that out, or even like Mitchell Robinson doing like a screen or something.
yeah, yeah,
Get him out of the paint.
yeah.
Also, I didn't realize it was this bad for OG Anunoby. He was 1 for 12 from the field.
Yeah,
Um,
and listen, he's entitled for that, to that, but it's a bad time for a game like that to happen, right? When you and I talked about this before we went on leave, that the Knicks don't just have two stars, right? The way they paid Anunoby, he's a star. And to give up 5 number 1 picks for Mikal Bridges, he's also a star player. And Mikal Bridges knows what it's like, to be in this type of playoff series from his run with Phoenix. So I would expect them to bounce back and have great games on Friday night in game six. But I mean, Brunson needs them to step it up. I agree with you, Towns. I mean, you think about the Detroit series, they were pounding him away. Detroit was much more physical than the Celtics, and Towns figured it out by shooting his 3 pointers. He couldn't miss. Without him hitting all those 3 pointers, what was that, game three or game four? There's no way the Knicks would have won that series. He bailed them out on that Sunday game in Detroit. I mean, but he was very purposeful in doing that. So you're right. I think that the Knicks will close them out. I still feel really confident. I felt confident about this matchup. A lot of people thought I was nuts, but I felt comfortable about this matchup. I didn't think Porzingis would give them anything. Poor guy. I know he's sick, but Porzingis also isn't good in these big moments. He wasn't great in the playoffs last year. Um, so I didn't know Cornette would be this good against Town. So how about OKC and Denver real quick? What are you thinking there? That's game six tonight back in Denver. That's been an exciting series. I don't know why Denver's only playing like six or seven guys at the most. Where OKC uses their whole bench. He hasn't gone away from and they've got a great coach as well. He's not won a championship, but he knows what he's doing. He's used that whole bench throughout the regular season, and he's using them in the playoffs. Whereas at Denver with Rick Adelman's son there now, the coach has really shrunk it. And I thought that Denver and some of those games have started a little later, so I haven't seen, I've been watching more of the highlights than anything, but they seem to be wearing out at the end. What are your thoughts on that series?
I'm leaning more towards Denver, only for the simple reason that they have the playoff pedigree.
Yeah,
Um, I wouldn't be surprised if OKC wins tonight. I really wouldn't, but
yeah,
Denver is battle tested. I know they don't have the same coach and all, and that
yeah,
still would be a crazy scenario that they make the conference finals
yeah,
with the coach that they hired a week before the season ended.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I don't know. I guess the biggest factor to me is who else is going to step up aside from Jokic.
yeah,
Obviously, he had an excellent game, but then they still lost.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so hopefully they can kind of figure it out. But honestly, it's such a back and forth series. I can see this going seven. I feel like it kind of has to go seven. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. You see these ex-Knicks having such a big role. I mean, Hartenstein is such a big part of that team. Takes and they play him and Holmgren together at times, such as when the Knicks play Robinson and Towns, together at times. And Hartenstein is such a good fundamental player, and so talented as well. And then you've got Randall and DiVincenzo, with Minnesota, and I don't regret the trade at all. I think I still say I said from day one that was a trade the Knicks I think had to make you have a chance to get a guy like Towns. Um, saying just last thing in the NBA, we'll jump over to some baseball and I'll come back with the shooting stars thing. Um, yeah, well, a lot of people think what you had said, and I know we don't think that way. That maybe the fix was in with Cooper Flag. Um, but how amazing is that? I mean, now you put him with Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, and all of a sudden you've got because Cooper Flag's a real deal, man. Seeing enough Duke games and watching him in the tournament and everything. I mean, this guy he's a real deal. He's going to be an excellent NBA player. But you put him now. Does this make Dallas a contender again?
Uh, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical on Cooper Flag for a dumb reason. Um, the last guy that we thought was a real deal and was definitely a surefire star was Zion Williamson.
Oh, God.
He went to Duke too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's a thing now in the NBA. You can look back at this. I think since 2000, every six number one overall pick is a bust. And Zion Williamson was picked 6 years ago.
Oh gosh.
And so I'm a little skeptical.
All right.
But on paper, though, I think it is a good fit. Um, I think going to Dallas is a good spot because they still have a good culture. I know that there's the weird thing with Nico Harrison and making the worst trade possibly in NBA history.
Yeah, he's still gonna get
They
fired at
were.
some point. Yeah, he's still gonna get fired in the
Oh
next
yeah.
year. Yeah, he's still gonna get fired, unfortunately,
Um, but they are like less than a year removed from making the NBA finals.
Yeah, yeah,
So like they still do have a good team. Anthony Davis, when healthy, is really good. Cooper
yeah,
Flag does have really good potential, and if Kyrie can stay healthy, like that's a really good combination.
yeah.
Now the West is still insane,
Oh, it is.
but I
Yeah,
think they could do it.
they could, yeah, yeah. And they still have they've got a really good supporting cast too, right? PJ Washington, Lively, Derek Lively, and the guy they got from the Lakers, I think, is a potential star, Max Christie. He just shows enormous potential. So that'll be really interesting. All right. There was a raccoon in the stands last night at City Field. Did you catch the video of that?
I did see that. Yeah.
Like, how does that happen? Anyway, let's talk some baseball. We got Subway Series this weekend. Mets took 2 out of 3 from the Pirates. The Yankees won last night, right? So I think they took 2 out of 3 from the Mariners. And
Yeah,
and
they came back. It was a Judge home run in the eighth inning.
that's what I thought. Okay. And that was an afternoon game, also, right? I could have
Yeah,
watched some of that, but um, the Subway Series obviously coming up. Let's overall thoughts on the Yankees at this point. We're what, 43, 44 games in. How you feeling about the Yankees?
I feel pretty good. Obviously, the injury to Oswaldo Cabrera really hurt. Definitely devastating injury. One of those injuries that like shakes a team a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah,
Um, but it's still okay. So I don't know. You might know this off the top of your head. I'd mentioned the Yankees. Obviously, they have the league leader in batting average, and number two is Paul Goldschmidt. Um, but as far as home runs go, obviously Judge now leads the majors with 15, tied
right.
with Schwarber. Um, do you know who's second on the team?
In home runs,
Yeah,
is it Trent? Why am I blanking on his last name? Yeah, because I know he's been hitting home runs a lot. Yeah,
Trent Grisham has 12.
Trent Grisham. Yes, yeah,
Just for context purposes, he had 15 in 2021. He had 17 in 2022. That was his career. 17.
and he's got 50.
Um,
How many does he have now? 12.
12.
Wow.
He
Yeah, he's
has
getting
he had
legs.
9 all of last year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, the Yankees are having one of those good problems where they have too many guys in the outfield that need time.
yeah.
Um, Between him, Dominguez, Bellinger, and Judge. Um, but and their pitching has been pretty good. Will Warren had a really good West Coast trip. He pitched yesterday, gave up 2 unearned runs, um, and then also had a good outing against the Athletics. I can't say Oakland anymore. Um, and so I think that's one of the things that the Yankees have been missing is like the 4 or 5 in their rotation has been just absolutely awful. But
Yeah.
like Warren has kind of rounded into shape a little bit. Yarbrough has kind of taken over after the cookie crumbled, and they DFA'd him. He's in the minors now. But really, like you had mentioned in the open, Max Fried has been excellent.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
you couldn't ask for more from him, and you wonder where this team would have been without him. They're 8-1 in his starts
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
Um, Carlos Rodon has also been pretty good. He's been very solid.
Yeah.
Um, but really, one of the biggest things that I'm concerned about moving forward is the infield. You've got Ben Rice and Paul Goldschmidt who are going to be like jostling for time between DH, first base, and whatever. Um, you got Volpe who will be there. He's solid. Guy will play 150 plus games. But second base and third base is just going to be really interesting. Right now, it's a collection of Oswald Peraza, DJ LeMahieu, and Yorbit Bibas,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's not great.
Yeah.
Um, DJ did have his first hit yesterday, but
Okay.
um, I think they need another infielder. I wonder if they will re-explore the Nolan Arenado trade.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know who they give up,
yeah,
but
yeah.
um,
I think
but they need something.
I think the more the Cardinals jump into contention here, I'm not sure they're going to be willing to trade him, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think also one of the biggest things is like I'm still looking at the scope of the American League. I don't know if there's anyone that really has stepped up as the favorite. Detroit has gotten off to a great start. And if you look at their record since August, they've had the best record in baseball. The Guardians have been really good. Seattle has also been really good, but I feel like the Yankees kind of own Seattle a little bit.
yeah,
Um, but like no one else in the West is really doing much.
yeah.
Texas continues to be confusing.
Strange
Even
team.
in the East,
Yeah,
nobody is above 500 aside from the Yankees.
yeah.
Yeah, Toronto, they're at 500. The Red Sox, I don't know. The Red Sox seem like I feel like the Red Sox is an implosion waiting to happen. That might
Yeah.
be wishful thinking, but I don't know. And then you got the Rays who play better on the road than they do at home.
Wow. They had their first
Uh,
rain delay in their history the other day, right?
yeah,
I thought I saw that.
the first of many. But
Yeah. Um, I'm surprised that the Orioles have gotten off to such a slow start, and I'm not sure that they're going to recover in that division. I think they'll miss Corbin Burns. I think they missed the starting pitching. But the Red Sox are probably the most interesting team right now to me because of this whole Rafael Devers thing. And it's hard to believe that he went public with it, and I don't know, man, play first base. I just, old school thinking just now listen, he's still upset, I'm sure, because they got Alex Bregman and they were saying all along when they were negotiating, he'll play second, but then when they got him, hey, you're gonna DH. And I'm sure that hit his pride, but you're paying, I mean, he's 315 million, right? Over 7, 8 years or something like that. So he's gonna be hard to trade, but and also if you trade him, who replaces that bat? I mean, he's still a great hitter. He got off to a slow start, but he's doing great right now. But I mean, come on, play first base. I mean, even Mike Piazza, Hall of Famer. He hated first base, but he still did it. He still tried, and it was a terrible experiment. It was Art Howe that did that. But I think you had mentioned Bryce Harper, also a star player, and he probably could go back to playing the outfield now. But he wants they've got a good outfield there, in Philly. So, his situation was a little different because of his arm injury. They didn't want him in the outfield because he could barely throw. So, but he embraced it. So I mean, Devers might have other reasons, who knows? But on the surface, it just seems like more of a pride thing. It's like you took me off third base, now you want to put me at first base. I'm one of the best. He's not one of the best fielding third basemen in baseball, but I'm one of the best hitting third basemen in baseball. Go ahead.
okay, I just looked this up. Defensive run saved since 2024. Um, so like the start of the year till now.
Yeah,
Alex Bregman has 10 defensive run saves. He's always been known as an excellent defensive third baseman. Part of
yeah,
the reason why the Yankees kind of considered
yeah.
him,
Oh, yeah, he
honestly.
is. Yeah,
Um, Rafael Devers, -9.
yeah.
So
So it's
like
no
you're saving
comparison.
19 runs. Like,
Yeah,
dude, you're not as good as he is.
it's no comparison, right? But the only thing I'll fault the Red Sox, and this is according to Devers, and this was everything we read, so who knows if that was true, was that when they got Bregman, they were saying he would play second base. Now if I'm Bregman, why am I? I've been an all-star, I've been a postseason hero for a long time, and I'm a great fielding third baseman, as you just noticed. Why am I moving to second base? Um, so Devers, it's an odd situation, but I think you said it. The Red Sox are one situation away from kind of imploding. Now, they do have a great manager, and so I think he'll keep that team afloat. And I do think that they won't implode. He'll figure out a way to push Devers' buttons and get him, you know, uh, get him to kind of just toe the line a little bit. But the Red Sox better hope that pitching, that all those guys that they signed and traded for, that they hold up. I mean, I think I texted you that said Walker Bueller is already hurt, which is kind of a shame. But they, when you take a flyer on some of these guys coming off Tommy John like that, these are some of the things that happen. Um, I don't have much on the Mets. We started to get some of the injury bug where, we've lost AJ Mentor for the season now and Danny Young, two really, really good left-handers. And AJ Mentor to me hurt because you like to have that veteran who's been through everything, playoffs, World Series, and he really started off effectively. But the Mets knew they were taking a fly, although his hip is not the injury that has him out, um, but they seem to come up with some guys that are doing well in the bullpen. Their bullpen was a strength. Their starting pitching is great. Clay Holmes got hit a little bit last night, which was unusual. He's been great. Peterson, their whole starting pitching. Griffin Canning is 5-1 and like a 2 point change ERA, So Sean Manaea comes back. I really feel good. I don't know. I bet still just go to a 6-man rotation because it's going to be hard to take any one of these guys out of the starting rotation right now. So I'm not worried still about Soto. He's hit a couple of home runs. He's come through in the clutch a few times. He gets on base. He gets on base all the time. I mean, so I think they gave him a day off finally yesterday. So I'm still not worried about him. Lindor's off, just a great start. I think if I was to make an early prediction, I'll say Lindor will be MVP this year because obviously he didn't come close last year, but he probably would have been MVP last year, and I think his numbers are even going to be better this year. You don't think so? You don't think he'll be MVP, Pete Alonso?
Like for the Mets or overall?
No, I think overall. You think it'll still be Ohtani?
Otani's batting 307, 13 homers, 22 RBIs, and he's
Yeah,
going to pitch. It's going to be annoying because you look
yeah,
at a guy like an Alonso
yeah.
or even a Schwarber who's
Oh,
15 home runs,
yeah.
393 on base. But the fact that he's going to pitch and not even pitch that well, he's going to win it.
He'll probably win it. All right. All right. One more baseball thing, and then we'll talk about shooting stars. The Pete Rose now eligible for the Hall of Fame. Kenny, and it's Shoeless Joe, right? And I think there were a few others that wouldn't get in it. They took off the ineligible list. Um, I sometimes scratch my head with Rob Manfred. I think he's been a good commissioner, but to me, for you to say he's not a threat to baseball anymore because he's dead. I mean, come on. He wasn't a threat to baseball. And listen, I'm not a Pete Rose guy. I thought he made his own bet. I mean, he should be in the Hall of Fame because of what he did on the field was unbelievable. And he should have been contrite. He should have fessed up right away. It took him 18 years to finally fess up, and it was because he put it in a book that he wanted to sell. You and I talked about that before. We talked about that when he passed away. Um, but I think at this point it's a non-story. Like I was just meh, I was just ho hum about it. What say you?
I agree. Um, I think it's a good measure of growth that like because it always seemed very very two-faced that a guy that was doing sports gambling is not eligible for the Hall of Fame, and yet MLB is sponsored by DraftKings and FanDuel and BetMGM and all these places. So I do think that that's a good aspect. Um, but like inducting someone into the Hall of Fame after they died is kind of just more of a footnote than anything else. Like that'd be like saying the same thing with Barry Bonds. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I know like the steroid thing is a whole other topic, and
yeah,
I do think eventually he'll probably get in. But like if he gets it after he dies, it kind of feels like
yeah,
it just kind of feels like it's a win for baseball, and then it doesn't matter because he's dead.
yeah. I just you're right on the gambling thing. It was just the cardinal sin back then. And I've talked about this a lot, and it's been quiet of late. Baseball, all sports, all major sports are fooling themselves if they think these players still aren't gambling with as easy as it is now, especially fringe players. When we saw in the NBA, one guy's suspended for life. Um, and so, but I mean, all these years later, my goodness, man, they could have did this. Listen, Bud Selig was never gonna take him off, right? Bud Selig was because he was an owner, and Bud Selig was very close to a lot of those veterans. I'll say this last thing on it. Um, I heard this. Howie Rose said this. I was listening to the game on the way home the other night, and he said that he had a lot of conversations with Ralph Kiner. Ralph Kiner got in the Hall of Fame on his last year of eligibility, right? I remember that being a big deal because he was such a slugger in his time that he should have been in the Hall of Fame, and he got in on his last year. But he he would go to their Cooperstown every year, and he said that there were a lot of Hall of Famers that were very close to Bud Selig, because Selig was an owner and he loved Hank Aaron. Selig knew a lot of the older Hall of Famers from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And Howie Rose said Ralph Kiner told him that Bud Selig had said, I'm never gonna put Pete Rose in because there were so many of the Hall of Fame veterans that said, if you put him in, we're never coming back, you know? And you could probably picture it was a lot of guys that probably didn't play for the Reds, so it probably wasn't Johnny Bench or Joe Morgan, or even Tom Seaver, but it was probably a lot of the old schoolers that was like, we don't like that guy, and look what he did, and he got caught, and he never, fessed up. If you put him in, we're out. We're never coming back to the ceremonies. We'll protest, whatever. But Rob Manfred could have changed that right away. I mean, he's been commissioner 10 years now, I think. He could have changed that right away. But it's a non-story to me because they still can't vote on it till what, 2027? 2 more years?
Yeah, because since he's past the 10 years, he would have to be voted in by the
Yeah.
Veterans Committee.
Yeah.
And the way that they do their rotation, like his era would be in
Right. His era
27.
doesn't
So
come up, right, till 2027. And then, so he would be class of 2028. Listen, that would have been a fascinating. I text this to you, right? It would have been a fascinating speech. See hear him get up there and accept his speech. I mean, it won't be the same whether his son, Pete Rose Jr., whoever would accept. I think he'll get in. I mean, I think a lot of the old timers that Ralph kind of was talking about have probably passed on now. So I don't. I think that probably the ones that are on the Veterans Committee now, the Tony La Russas of the world and folks like that, they'll probably put him in. Is my guess. You know, but I don't really care anymore. I really don't.
well, 2028, some potential eligible guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just just for kicks and giggles here. Zach Britton, Lorenzo Kane, Brock Holt, Mark Melanson, Yadier Molina. I could see
Oh,
him.
Hall of Fame. Yeah,
Um, Darren O'Day, Mets legend there.
you know,
David Price, nah.
no,
I'll
good
skip
for a
that
long
one
time.
because he's
No.
a shoe in.
Who's this?
Andrelton, I'm going to skip a name and then I'm
Oh,
going to go
okay,
back to him.
okay.
Andrelton Simmons,
No,
nah, he's not getting in.
no.
Steven Strasburg, which will be an interesting case because of his
Well,
2019.
yeah,
But if he gets in, it's in the potential that he could have been great. But
yeah, yeah.
Kurt Suzuki, Justin Upton, Stephen Vogt. But the guy that'll definitely be in will be Albert Pujols.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. That'd be nice. Have
so
Elena go in together, right?
yeah, which that'll be fun.
Yeah,
But like, because my worry, I looked at it and my concern was like, well, if it's Pete Rose, that's all the talk it's going to be.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I would feel bad for Albert Pujols.
I would. Yeah, yeah,
But hopefully, I think that they would make it a little bit more about
yeah.
the people that are living. Hopefully.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. All right. Ken, I'm gonna try to be quick, but this was a fascinating documentary called Shooting Stars on Netflix. I highly recommend watching it, even though I'm gonna give away pretty much the whole story, but it's all a true story. And so this is based on the whole guns in the locker room incident with Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenton. And so there was so many things I learned about this that either I had forgotten or just didn't know about this story. And there's a couple I think your eyes are going to open wide on a few of these. first I want to just go back to the background of these two guys, right? They both come from very different backgrounds. Arenas grew up in a very mixed area in LA. His father wanted to be an actor, and he was raised by a single father, right? And but he was always the class clown. Arenas always had to be funny, playing pranks on people through the time he was in elementary school, college, and then in the NBA. And keep that in mind because this is where this whole incident backfired. And I'm not exaggerating when I say just this one incident that these two guys had not only changed the direction of both of their lives, but tragically changed the direction of someone else's life. Um, so anyway, if you remember this, Arena is on that Arizona team in 2001 that goes to the championship game and loses to Duke. And he goes to the NBA, he goes to the draft. Arenas wasn't as highly sought out when he came out of high school. So I think he went to junior college, if I remember right, for a year or two, and then Arizona picked him up. And he's on this team with Richard Jefferson and with Michael Wright, who the Knicks picked number 10. That's a side note. They picked him number 10 that year, and he was a total bust. I don't know, do you remember Michael Wright? So I remember him on Arizona. I remember him faintly with the Knicks, and he was their number one pick that year. But anyway, um, Arenas drops in the draft, and that sort of like with Aaron Rodgers, that puts a chip on his shoulders. And he finally gets picked by Golden State, I believe, in the second round, if I remember right. He plays 3 years at Golden State, and he becomes a restricted free agent. And there's actually some sort of Gilbert Arenas rule now because Golden State wasn't allowed to match the Wizards' offer because it would have put them above their salary cap. And that I think is the last time that that happens now. You can match any restricted free agent offer. And so he winds up going to the Wizards where you'll kind of now start to remember this. He becomes a star. And the Wizards, go to the playoffs every year pretty much that he's there. I mean, and he embraces this agent zero thing where and he hits clutch shots at the end of games. I mean, he's a closer. He's ice water in his vein. He's fast. He could shoot. He's a legit all-star every year that he's there in Washington. Um, so that's Arenas in a nutshell. Crittenton wasn't obviously as famous, but I will say this: he plays on the same high school team. This is going to be an important point at the end. He plays on the same high school team with Dwight Howard. And Crittenton is highly sought after because he's a McDonald's All-American. And he's an excellent shooting guard. Now he plays the same position as Arenas. He's a shooting guard. But Crittenton grew up outside of Atlanta, kind of grew up in the hood. But he stayed away from the streets because he's raised just the opposite. He's raised by a single mom who was very strict on him. And he kind of toed the line, stayed out of trouble for the most part, and he's a really sought after talent. But he really doesn't want to go to UCLA. He doesn't want to go to Arizona. He wants to stay close at home, and he gets recruited by Georgia Tech, and he goes to Georgia Tech, and he makes like second team All American at Georgia Tech. He's an excellent player, right? When he comes out in the draft, he also drops down some, but he gets drafted by the Lakers. He doesn't want to go play in LA because it's far away from home, but he embraces it. He says, "Okay, let's do this." But he's Phil Jackson is not a fan of him. He in the preseason, he didn't want to play in the triangle offense. Phil Jackson was still running a triangle with the Lakers, and so Crittenton, he doesn't tell him until the last minute. Crittenton flies his whole family out to LA to see the opening night. He thinks he's going to play, and sort of like Mike D'Antoni did with Stephon Marbury, although I think Marbury suited up. He tells Crittenton, "Listen, don't even suit up. You're not playing tonight. In fact, you're not going to play for a while." And he's devastated. His whole family's there in the stands, and he's in a suit sitting on the sidelines. So their NBA trajectory goes in a couple of different directions here. Now, Washington has all of their money tied up in Antoine Jameson and Gilbert Arenas. So they don't have much salary cap left to bring in other players. That's why they were kind of stuck in like being the number 5 seed, number 6 seed, losing in the first round, every year. they're looking for bargains, to pick up. That's not going to cost them much. And Crittenton, after his third year in with the Lakers as well, is one of those bargains. They sign him kind of on the cheap, with him thinking now he's going to get an opportunity to play and prove himself here in Washington. Washington a little bit closer to his home, and he does. He plays extremely well. He's not a star by any means in the NBA, but he's Arenas' backup. And he plays well, and he has a couple of really solid years in the NBA now. Now we flash forward. Arenas, as I said, is a clown, right? He's always playing pranks on everyone. Crittenton doesn't like any of that. It's not like they didn't get along. Crittenton just kind of avoids Arenas in the locker room, right? Everybody else plays along with Arenas because he's the star of the team. Crittenton is like, don't be playing jokes on me, exploding cigars and stuff like that. He does some really crazy things to his teammates, right? But Crittenton is not about that. So anyway, they're on a flight. Flash forward now. They're on a flight. It's still early in the season. They're on a flight. This is in the 2011 season now. They're on a flight from Phoenix to Los Angeles, or from Los Angeles to Phoenix, and it's a short flight, right? 45 minutes, and they're playing cards, and two of them, JaVale McGee, gets into a dispute with another player that I'm forgetting, and they're playing cards because McGee owes this player $200 from when they were playing cards. This was kind of their culture, right? They play cards on the airplane. And now Crittenton and Arenas are not even involved in this, but they start to have words, McGee and the other player. And Arenas steps in and says, "What's wrong with you, man? Why don't you pay him, the $200? You got it. You don't pay him, a little bit at a time." And he's like, "No, I'm just trying to win the money back." They now get into a heated argument that starts to turn serious. Crittenton then steps in and takes McGee's side. And now him and Arenas, sort of this buildup kind of blows over to the point where it's Arenas. And Arenas, what's fascinating about this documentary, Kenny, is that Crittenton and Arenas are both interviewed for it, right? And they reveal everything. So Arenas said, I was the first one when Crittenton said, "Well, listen, when we get off this plane, we can throw hands." And Arenas said, "No, instead of throwing hands, how about if I just shot you?" And Crittenton is like, "What now?" Again, Crittenton's from a different place. He takes that very seriously. And Arenas at first, he says, first I'm kind of half joking. But when Crittenton said, "Okay, you bring what you got, I'll bring what I got," they exchanged some really serious words. And now the rest of the flight is like, are they serious about this? Did they really mean this? All right. So now they play their game in Phoenix. Nothing happens in that locker room. They fly back to Washington. And now Arenas lives in the Arizona area. And so this is going to be another key part that never was revealed until this documentary. That first game in Washington, Arenas gets there early. Arenas brings two of his guns. Now Arenas had a girlfriend in college. Her father had a gun collection of 300 guns. Arenas buys that whole gun collection with one of his first NBA paychecks, right? And so now Arenas has got this collection of guns in his house, and he brings them with him to Washington. And he puts them, he sits them right in Crittenton's locker, right outside of his locker with a note. And I'm forgetting what the note said, but it was like a cryptic note. Oh, it's something that said, "Your turn now, your move now," something like that. He actually because Arenas says, "I'll bring you the guns and I'll dare you to shoot me with my own gun." Now, Crittenton takes that so seriously that he doesn't realize Crittenton has a gun. He has one gun, and he brings it with him into the locker room that day. And when he sees this, the whole team is sitting there. He explodes. He picks up one of Arenas's guns and he throws it across the locker room. And everyone is now terrified because they think it's going to go off. And now the players have now retreated except for Arenas and Crittenton. And then Crittenton pulls out his own gun and he actually points it at Arenas. Doesn't pull the trigger. It becomes more serious, but cooler heads kind of prevail on this. Now, coach doesn't do anything. Um, this stays in house. They figure, hey, we'll handle this all in house, and for the most part, they do. There's no fines, there's nothing that Washington does here, the GM or the coach. Peter Vesey was sort of, you remember Peter Vesey? He was a great writer. I don't think he writes much anymore. He's up there in age because he was an NBA writer in the 70s, I remember. But he's an insider at this time. And so he has sources on every team. And Peter Vesey's sort of like the Shams of our day now, right? Of the day back then, if I was to make a comparison. So Vesey finds out this whole story and he confronts the GM about it. He says, is this even remotely true? And the GM is like, how did you get this information? He says, never mind, I'm going to run with this story, you know? And so he does. He runs with it in the New York Post the next day, and it's stunning. That next day, David Stern has both Arenas and Crittenton in his office. And he's livid that something like this would happen. And he's livid more at the Washington management that they didn't report this, right? So I don't know if you remember this. It didn't take him long. It took him only another day or two. He hands down a 50-game suspension for both of them. And 50 games is exactly what's left in the rest of the season. So he essentially suspends them for the rest of the season, fines them millions of dollars, right? Arenas, because people were like, even then was like, that's kind of harsh. I mean, that's serious. They had guns, and it really didn't come out that you know that he not only threw the gun, he took out his and he pointed it at Arenas like he was going to shoot him. And the guns were loaded, by the way. That was the other part of his story. So now, a day or two later, before he puts down the suspension, he calls Arenas back into, Commissioner Stern calls him back into his office. And he said, listen, I have one. This is, and Arenas reveals this. This was never revealed before. He said, I have one question to ask you. How did you get those guns to Washington? And Arenas is like, I I put them in my bag and I brought them on the plane. And he's like, okay, so that's why this is going to be a 50-game suspension because you transported. Because remember, these guys have chartered flights. They don't have to go through security or anything like that. So not only did you bring weapons into the locker room, which is against NBA rules, you transported these weapons all the way from Phoenix to Washington. So that's why I'm going to suspend you for the rest of the year because that's a federal offense. You better be lucky that the feds don't go after you. And by the way, they did, but they dropped it, right? They said, this is something we're not going to pursue. You know, um, he's already being punished enough. Crittenton, on the other hand, was living in Washington, right? So he never, but he told him, he said, if I suspend you 50 games and Crittenton 30, that's not going to look right. He said, because I don't want this to come out that you transported two guns from Phoenix on an NBA chartered flight. He said, I should be kicking you out of the league. He said, I'm doing you a favor by just suspending you the rest of the season. So that was one of those things that came out that I didn't know. All right, I'm going to speed it up here a little bit, Kenny, because their lives then change forever. Arenas is never the same. He plays one more year with Washington, and Washington can't wait to get rid of him. He falls out of favor with the fans. He has a terrible year, his worst season, doesn't make the All-Star team. They can't wait to dump him. They pay him off and they cut him. I'm sorry, they traded him to Orlando. He never does anything in Orlando. He hurts his knee. Um, and he's still kind of the same guy, the same clown there. And so Orlando didn't want to have it, even though Dwight Howard was there at the time. Um, so he bounces around a little bit. Next thing you know, he's out of the league. He's playing overseas. But Arenas gets his life back on track. He has a son. Son probably is going to be an NBA prospect. They showed a little bit of him. He's really tall and he's in high school, or he just made it into high school. He spends almost all of his time with his son. And as you know, Arenas started, a pretty successful podcast that he has now. I think with Kenyon Martin and Nick Young, if you remember him, Swaggy P. Um, um,
The best shot in the world.
yeah,
When he
yeah,
made that,
yeah.
missed that basket, but celebrated as though he made it.
I remember that. All right. Crittenton is a total different story, Kenny, and I'll try to be quick because this is where the story just takes a grim turn. Crittenton is also, he's cut by the Wizards right after, right? He shows up for camp and they're like, yeah, We don't need you. It was a they didn't have as much money invested in him, so they cut ties with him totally. He catches on with a couple of teams, I believe, with Charlotte, one or two other NBA teams, but his career is never the same. He falls into a deep depression. And he goes to play a little while overseas as well, never pans out for him. He comes back to Atlanta. And he comes back to Atlanta and he starts to get into the street life. And because he's bored, he still has some money, right? And he's driving a nice car and he's wearing a lot of nice jewelry but he's bored. He doesn't know what he's going to do with the rest of his life. So he starts hitting the club scene and he starts doing drugs. And he gets robbed at gunpoint, not once, but twice. And they take his chains, they take his money. He almost gets carjacked. He goes back into the area that he grew up in, which had really changed for the worst. And but he's up the street. He's got this anger built up to him in him of everything that happens. The second time he gets robbed, he knows the guy that did it, right? And he goes looking for him, that same gun. He takes that same gun with him, and he finds the guy. It's in the middle of the night, and the guy is walking. He rolls up on him and he shoots him. But he fires another shot. First shot grazes the guy. Second shot, the lady that he's with catches her in the head and she dies instantly. And he
Mhm.
talks about how he drove away and he saw her body in the road and his heart sank, but he still ran. And it didn't take the police long to figure this whole thing out. They actually have the detective that did this. Because there's even if it was like 1, 2 in the morning, but they were like hanging out, there was a lot of witnesses, and everybody knew his car. Everybody knew he was a former NBA player. And so he gets arrested relatively quickly. He gets convicted to 23 years in prison for like involuntary manslaughter. They know it wasn't anything. He did plan to go and kill the other guy or shoot the other guy. And it was accidental that he kills this lady, but he takes a life. And this lady's 22 years old, Ken, and she's a mother of four. And so
Oh
they
my
have her mother on this documentary, and she's devastated. Here's where the story then takes another turn. He's released very quietly, he's released from prison after serving 10 years of a 23-year sentence. And originally, the judges said, I'm not going to have you eligible for parole until year 20, right? It wasn't like, hey, you could serve half your sentence, good behavior, whatever. This was so egregious to take away this life. And the judge, I remember, also said something they didn't show the judge, but I think it was in one of the statements that he'd be still young enough to get his life back on track, even serving 23 years. Might be in his 40s, you know? Um, anyway, he's let out after 10 years and they can't figure out why. This it's like sealed as to why they let him out after 10 years. Here's where him going to high school with Dwight Howard comes into play. Dwight Howard's brother is the DA, district attorney in
God.
Atlanta at the time. And they think that he had something to do with getting him released early. All the records are sealed. There's no specific reason why, but the police officer, the detective who arrested him said, I can't think of another reason why they would let him out after 10 years. It's devastatingly sad at this point, the story, and it all points back to this one bad decision that the two of these guys made in this locker room. That not only it's one thing if you lose your job in the NBA or whatever, but it's a whole other thing that a 22-year-old lady gets killed. And Crittenton says, I would have never been out in the streets had I still been playing in the NBA. And the reason
Mhm.
why I wasn't still playing in the NBA was because of the bad decision that I made. He takes full accountability for everything because they interview him because obviously he's out. The story, I guess, has a bittersweet sort of ending. Arenas and Crittenton are friends to this day. Arenas blames himself also, and he calls him every week, checks on him. He hinted that he sent him money, because Arenas made a lot of money in the NBA, so Arenas is financially fine. Crittenton didn't. Um, they talk. There's they didn't specifically say there's been all this forgiveness, but they've reconciled and become friends. Crittenton, what he does now full time is he works with local youth in the Atlanta area. He tells his story. Um, of how he got back into drugs and how guns and how kids should just obviously stay away from that. So bittersweet. The mother though is one of the last people that I think is interviewed, and she said that he's never contacted her, um and she said that she knows that justice wasn't done for this 22-year-old whose life was taken. She wasn't doing anything, um and he only got 10 years for that. He did bring a gun, he did shoot at the other guy, um and so you feel for her, your heart breaks because that family was never the same. These four kids were very young at the time, and grandmother had to raise them. It's a horrific end to this story. So, Ken, biblically, right? We have a choice at times, right, on what decisions to make, and we follow, and there's not a mention of God in this. So, in this whole hour, it's a movie. It's like an hour. It's not in episodes. It's one straight thing. It's about an hour and 40 minutes long. I would still recommend to watch it, even though I gave away most of it because I can't describe the looks on all of their faces. Arenas to me seems exactly the same. He doesn't seem remorseful. He doesn't. He just seems like kind of exactly the same. But you can kind of tell maybe he is a little remorseful. Crittenton definitely regrets his actions. Not only his actions in the locker room, but his actions where it resulted in this young lady's death. But I think that if we listen to how God leads us every day, these type of things will never happen. You see, once they went too far on the plane, now once these guns are laid out, the street pride from Crittenton got in the way. He could have just walked away and went and got the coach or whatever and said, I don't know what he's doing. He's just left this note along with these two guns at my locker. He could have easily just, taken the high road there, but he didn't. And I think that, all of us have had those times in our lives where we're challenged a little bit, but we choose to maybe take that step away. This not only changed their lives, but it changed the life of that family. And that's what's so tragic. It's a fascinating documentary. I forgot. I didn't know that Crittenton even this happened to him at the end there, right? I thought he was just some, random player who faded away. Fact is, he was a McDonald's All-American. He was a great player in high school and in college. I think he was third in the nation in scoring in his second year at Georgia Tech. You know, but Arenas we knew a lot about. Anyway, um, I'll leave it there. Your thoughts, real quick.
Um, I didn't realize a lot of that too. I mean, like aside aside from like the incident with Ron Artest, one of the bigger
Yeah.
stories I remember growing up.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it just kind of seems like one bad decision really affected them. Two things really stick out though. Number one, the fact that they're friends now is
Yeah.
kind of ironic. Um, but also, I do see that a lot in our neighborhood where uh, there will be like two kids, they'll fight one day, and then later on the next day, they're best friends.
Yeah.
Um, which I guess shows like a level of forgiveness that sometimes it's hard to get. Because, like, in my head, I'm like, man, you ruined my life. I hate you for life.
Yeah.
But
Got that. Yeah. Yeah.
but I think that's a commendable thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is the I think of the story of Joshua, where they conquered Jericho and they're about to hit up Ai, and Achan stole stuff from Jericho and was not supposed to. And as a result, 40, 30 something people died.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like one of the bigger lessons we always like whenever I preach on that or talking about that story is how our actions affect other people. And like the selfishness of Achan in that story cost the life of dozens of Israelites.
Yeah.
And in this instance, like Crittenden's dumb actions of trying to get revenge on someone that robbed him instead of like you know who it is, you could easily go to the police and be
Yeah.
like, this guy tried to rob me. Here's
Yeah.
his name, here's his address, there you go.
Yeah.
But
He
yet
knew
he
who he
decided
was.
to take it
Yeah.
into his own hands,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
as a result, a 22-year-old woman with 4 kids died.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, a lot of times we think our actions don't really affect other people, but they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, it's a sad and remarkable story. And the last quick thing I'll say is David Stern, you brought up that David Stern had some tough issues, right? He had to deal with the whole Latrell Sprewell choking PJ Carlissimo thing, the whole Malice at the Palace that you as you brought up. And then he dealt with this and he did a great job keeping it quiet all these years. I mean, obviously David Stern passed away a few years ago, but he kept that quiet. But he dealt with it, I think, in a great way, suspending both of them for 50 games. Crittenton got the raw end there because he didn't transport guns on a plane on an NBA chartered flight, but he couldn't differentiate and say, hey, he's getting, because then he would have had to say why is Arenas getting 50 games and he's getting 20 or 25. So all right, with that, you ready for some inspiration?
I'm ready.
All right, mine is quick. It's Eric Osray. I had him as inspiration last year. He had a cup of coffee with the Mets last year and finally made the major leagues, beaten cancer twice. The Mets traded him for Jose Siri in the offseason, and Siri got hurt, broke his leg pretty early on with the Mets. Looked like he had some potential there. Wasn't hitting, but boy, he was exciting on the field. He's fast, and so he's still out at least another month or so. Where Osray is pitching regularly with the Tampa Bay Rays and is having a phenomenal start to his season in 11 games. He has 2 saves and a 1.26 ERA. So very, very much past his 2 battles with cancer in the majors, doing well. Eric Osray, God bless you. Good luck to you. Stay healthy. And want to see you do well unless you're pitching against the Mets or Yankees.
Speaking of really good pitchers, this is not my inspiration, but um, 20 innings pitched, at least 45 strikeouts, or no, a sub 0.45 ERA, and at
Wow.
least 20 strikeouts as a Yankee. There's 2 guys that have done it. Mariano Rivera in 1998 and Luke Weaver in 2025. He's been excellent.
Man, Weaver has saved him, man. He bailed him out last year when Holmes went sideways, and he's bailed him out this year. Wow, amazing,
Yeah,
amazing.
but keep him in there. But today I want to talk really quick about a fun Cardinals legend who retired this week.
Oh,
Um, I don't know if you saw Matt Carpenter
Matt
had
Carpenter,
retired.
sure. Yeah,
And obviously, like, well known as a Cardinal, well known in Yankee land as being like, man, this guy was good for about 4 months
yeah,
out of nowhere.
yeah.
Um, but in his he had retired on like a faith-based podcast, like kind of announcing it. But one of the things that he said that I thought was very interesting, is like, as he's like saying like thank you to everyone, he always starts with, I want to first thank God. My faith has carried me through every moment of this journey, the highs, the struggles, the growth. None of it happened by accident. I leaned on him every step of the way, and I know he's guiding me into whatever comes next.
Wow.
um because like, and also his story is just kind of amazing, where he was like really good, like a very solid player on those Cardinal teams in the 2010s, and then just kind of fell off.
Yeah,
But then he gets into like that training thing in Texas. The Yankees pick him up. He has an amazing season. And then obviously, like, he breaks his leg or breaks his foot, misses pretty much the whole season, comes back for the playoffs, but was like definitely, well, couldn't have done it. Like, it just wasn't a good idea.
yeah,
Um, and then gets a nice contract with the Padres, but then obviously like just kind of
yeah.
fell off again. So shout out to Matt Carpenter. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but
Wow.
man, All Star 3 years,
Yeah,
14-year career. Like,
yeah.
most players would love that.
He was a good player. He was clutch, man. I remember against the Mets, he always would come up with a big hit. Played a couple of different positions, if I remember right, and definitely an all-star for those few years. I remember him more on that team that beat Texas. I thought he had a pretty good World Series, if I remember right, as well. He was a good player. I saw that he retired. I didn't realize he did it on a Christian podcast. Awesome.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Lots to talk about next week. We're we're hoping maybe next week we talk about the Knicks and the Pacers, and the we got to speak that into existence. Knicks and Pacers, and that's gonna be a tough matchup for the Knicks, man. But first we got to put away the champions here, and that's not going to be easy. So certainly a lot more NBA playoffs next year. We'll certainly recap the Subway Series. I don't think the Mets are going to sweep the Yankees like they did last year. But we'll see. I think it's an afternoon game Saturday, and then Sunday night going old school. Back on, remember all of those games used to be nationally televised. Remember back in the day, they've gotten away from that though for a bit. But Sunday night will be the game with Mets and Yankees. So
Yeah, this is rivalry week, so let's go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. All right, bud. Ready? Take us home.
All right. This is Kenny Squared and
Kenny.
Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next week. Go Knicks.
Go Knicks.